I teach people how to connect their worship of gods or worship of spirits with the land. Sometimes this involves one's relationship with nature, or sometimes even weather spirits, or plant spirits, or animal spirits. But this podcast will cover topics such as animism and shamanism, um, one's spiritual connection with the land or with the water, and related topics. But today I wanted to talk about just a tiny bit about animal spirits, um, which I'll talk more about, but it's currently a focus I have right now. I'd like to tell you what prompted me to start this journey in the first place. After a series of very traumatic and harrowing experiences that I found could not be explained by going to other humans for help. When I say humans, you'll get to know that I use that word a lot because we're dealing with not just humans here. We're dealing with different kinds of energies. So that's I say that to differentiate between human or non-human. So after these series of experiences that were very traumatic, that couldn't be explained by going to other humans for help, I was forced to discover other ways of solving the problem. And so the first thing I realized was that I needed to accept other types of life consciousnesses. For example, like the animal spirits. And of course, ideally, over time, I learned how to build a rapport with these kinds of beings. And that's kind of like the short, summary version of basically of what happened, which could be broken down into many, many, many steps. But I just wanted to kind of touch on that briefly, and also add a few other things. As I relate this to kind of a bigger picture, like, for example, we're in I'm going to flip back and into a more human experience, which is, we're living on the earth right now in the 21st century, and we're in a climate crisis, very, very much so. Whether you believe in climate change or not, there are things happening that scientists, they projected would happen, and they're happening even faster than the scientists predicted, which in general is not a positive sign. So we have several layered problems that humanity, the human species, needs to address because we are part of a larger web of life. When I say web of life, I'm referring to animals and plants and the water and the land. But also, I think some people understand this, but I think a lot of people don't recognize it at first. There is a spiritual component, an energy that is very, very important, that is also enveloped and intertwined and permeates throughout each one of those, for example, animal spirits. There's an animal spirit as well as the animal that you can see in front of you. So for a long time, for example, if we went back at least 30,000 years, let's say 25 to 30,000 years. For a long time, the plants and animals have a memory. If we looked at it from their perspective, from a plant and a plant spirit, they have a memory of us humans relating with them in conversation. So if we traveled back in time, for example, I could definitely guarantee you, without a doubt, that back in time there was you could say it was a kinetic kind of exchange between in a liminal space between humans and the spirits of plants, humans and the spirits of animals, humans and the spirits of, nature in general, which is, I think, nonverbal, but there was definitely a lot of verbalizing as well. So with that in mind, if you kind of think about the concept of water, for example, water holds memory in it. Spaces that are sacred, they hold memory in them. And we could go off on that tangent for 2 or 3 hours. But my point is, that's true. Okay? So if you take that into consideration, that these places and these plants and these animals, that they hold memories that go back tens of thousands of years. If they remember, which they do, us humans relating with them in the conversation, keep that in mind, because the next time you hear somebody, a human being, say, well, the earth would go on without humans, it will, or the earth will continue to go on without humans. But here's the problem with that. There's a lot of people and a lot of plants and a lot of non-human beings who have memories, including us, both human and non-human, of talking to each other, of not just talking to each other, of being in a community together and working in, I don't want to call it, utopia, because it isn't, but there was, of course the Andeans would call it sacred reciprocity. The Native Americans have another name for it, but it's not exclusive to any one indigenous culture. There was an exchange that happened in Northern Europe between the people who lived there and the land they lived on with spirits. So, the earth spirits, whether they be plants or animal spirits, or maybe it's a tree, or maybe it's a fairy. Some people are familiar with the word fairies. That's a more familiar word to some people. Or, land spirits, or landvater. Um, these beings are very real, and I'm sure they realize that humans could just as much not be here. But here's the thing, we're part of the cycle now, and we're part of the reciprocity cycle. Only we've been, what's the expression, kind of laxing on the job lately. When I say lately, I mean for the last couple thousand years. When you compare a couple thousand years to, 20,000 years, it doesn't seem as much. But there was a time when we were very involved in the nonverbal spiritual exchange of information and love and caring and just general reciprocity, just exchange. And so the earth would go on without us humans, but on the other hand, there is a long tradition of plant and animal life working and visiting and celebrating and mourning and feeling with us humans in relationship. That's why, plants have consciousness. When you go up to a tree, I guarantee you, if you get to know that tree over time, you will start to feel its feelings. And I believe that plants and animals and the spirits of the land, spirits of the water, all of this, all of that realm of being, they want us humans to get back into relation with them on a grander scale. Hence, animism. Animism is the belief, it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. But for today, let's just call animism the belief that everything has a soul and a spirit. Now, obviously, that's a jumping off point, but it is an important jumping off point, because in order to develop the relationship, I think one has to first believe that the being has a soul and a spirit and consciousness anyway. So I think it's a very helpful jumping off point. So this is a bit of what I wanted to talk about today, some of the broader concepts, and but also just tying it into my own reasons for wanting to get to know the animal spirit family.